Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post. Today we're talking about woke diversity, equity, and inclusion programs getting destroyed in workplaces nationwide. Edward Blum, the same guy who pushed to force colleges to remove affirmative action discrimination from college applications, is now going after businesses to get rid of discriminatory practices based on affirmative action using diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring and promotion strategies. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. The guy who's doing this is actually really successful at this. His name is Edward Blum. He's an American conservative legal strategist known for his activism against affirmative action based on race and ethnicity. He connects potential plaintiffs with attorneys who are willing to represent them in test cases, which he tries to use to set legal precedents. He's the director of the Project for Fair Representation, which he founded in 2005. So who is this guy and why is Stacey Abrams so afraid of him? First, Stacey Abrams warns that Edward Blum's anti-affirmative action lawsuits are designed to chill diversity efforts, and it's working. Silence speaks volumes. The recent spate of lawsuits against organizations that support diversity and inclusion, from law firms to the Fearless Fund, an investment company, has led some companies to hide their heads in the sand, hoping to avoid becoming a target. And they are targets because what they've been doing is not appropriate, and it's not even legal. Affirmative action wars hit the workplace. Conservatives target woke DEI programs. Edward Blum has filed dozens of lawsuits challenging racial preferences in American life, from affirmative action to voting rights. His most recent win came when he sued Harvard over its race-conscious college admissions policies. Those were overturned by the Supreme Court, a huge win for Edward Blum, but for everyone in the country. Now, fresh off that landmark affirmative action victory, Blum has set his sights on the private sector. His organization, the American Alliance for Equal Rights, recently filed 2 discrimination lawsuits. In August, he sued an Atlanta firm, Fearless Fund, that backs Black women entrepreneurs, and only Black women entrepreneurs. That's the discrimination. He also sued 2 major law firms, Morrison, Forrester, and Perkins Coie, for offering fellowships to diverse candidates only. Morrison Foster this week quietly opened its diversity fellowship to students of all races. Wow, that sounds like it's truly diverse then. Blum's quest to dismantle corporate diversity initiatives began back in 2021 when he took the state of California and NASDAQ to court over board diversity mandates. This was another one of his wins. From USA Today, a groundbreaking California law to address workplace diversity was overturned. What happens now? Well, that was him, and that was his work, refusing to allow California to have racial quotas on boards of directors, an absolutely ridiculous non-merit-based idea. The affirmative action activist says he has more lawsuits planned. Quote, racial classifications and preferences need to be handled with the most delicate of gloves, or corporations and other institutions will be in violation of the law, Blum told USA Today. Conservatives seize on affirmative action ruling to attack diversity programs. I covered this in another video a couple months ago. It was a very big deal that affirmative action was considered not legitimate as a reason to discriminate on college applications, and that it had major implications for business. And now this is more of a follow-up on it. Corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives were already under fire from GOP leaders like Florida Governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis. Republican criticism only intensified in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling in June that struck down affirmative action. Though it does not apply to employers, conservative activists seized on the high court ruling, saying it raises fundamental issues about how corporate America addresses workplace inequality. A lot of attorneys do feel that it absolutely does apply to workplaces, but there are other workplace protections that prevent employers from discriminating, even if they have, quote, good intentions, when they don't give people opportunities based on merit. Quote, the decision was clear that all Americans have the same civil rights, and those rights forbid discriminating for or against anyone on the basis of race, sex, or orientation, said Scott Shepard, director of the National Policy for Research's Free Enterprise Project, which challenges DEI and other woke initiatives in corporate America. Since then, the nation has seen an uptick in legal challenges from conservative activists. America First Legal, Stephen Miller's operation, the former senior advisor to former President Donald Trump, and other former Trump administration officials working with him have filed complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission against diversity programs at more than a dozen companies, including Starbucks, McDonald's, and Morgan Stanley. In a blog post, America First Legal claimed that all DEI programs are illegal. Of course they're illegal. You are not allowed to discriminate, even if you say it's for a social purpose that you personally agree with. You don't get to decide if someone of a certain skin color or someone of a certain race or someone of a certain orientation deserves an opportunity that's not based on merit. It's absolutely illegal. Quote, if a major corporation said in proxy statements to shareholders or in the HR section of their website, we are going to increase the white composition of our workforce by 15% this year, I think most folks would say, well, that's kind of racist and that seems wrong. Gene Hamilton, Vice President and General Counsel of America First Legal, told USA Today in an interview. In America, we do not have preferred races, one way or another. We just don't. From ESG to CRT, the conservative backlash against big business is spreading. From environment, social, and governance principles to critical race theory, the conservative backlash against corporate America's embrace of social issues is the nation's latest cultural wedge. These aren't social issues. These are communist Marxist issues versus American issues. They're not American issues. DeSantis and other GOP leaders have accused corporations of running diversity programs that paint all white people as racist and abandoning colorblind systems based on merit to hire and promote people of color. Well, there's no accusation there. That's what the dispute is. Daniel Morinoff, executive director of the American Civil Rights Project, which for years has pressured companies like Coca-Cola and McDonald's to back off diversity programs, says the Supreme Court ruling has energized conservatives to block the increasingly leftward tilt of big business. Quote, I think it would be safe to say that there appears to be greater interest in the activity in this sphere, Morinoff told USA Today. Immediately after the Supreme Court ruling, Republican state attorneys general warned large corporations like Microsoft and Walmart against race-conscious practices in hiring and contracting. That's the nicest way they can say it, race-conscious practices. It's racial discrimination is really what it is. They have a special set of language they like to use when they refer to their social programs to make them sound more innocuous. They're not innocuous. When you take merit out of the equation, when people are given opportunities, you create tremendous cultural rot and destruction and division. Democrats fire back, accusing GOP state attorneys general of attempting to intimidate corporations into abandoning permissible diversity efforts. Top lawyers from 7 states promised legal cover to companies whose DEI programs face challenges from GOP officials. Quote, we write to reassure you that corporate efforts to recruit diverse workforces and create inclusive work environments are legal and reduce corporate risk for claims of discrimination, the Democrats wrote. In fact, businesses should double down on diversity-focused programs because there is still much more work to be done. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law and 6 other civil rights groups this week filed an amicus brief in support of the Fearless Fund, a program that awards $20,000 grants to small businesses owned only by Black women that was sued by Blum. Black women received less than 1% of venture capital funding, so that's the opportunity to discriminate. Fearless Fund founders Arian Simone and Ayanna Parsons have retained prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump to fight the lawsuit. We see Ben Crump everywhere, and we'll see him in this lawsuit. I've never really seen him practice law, but he doesn't seem like he's a great lawyer. Quote, in the face of persistent systemic discrimination against Black people and all people of color arising from our country's long history of racism, Ed Blum and his recently created Front Group are bent on dismantling programs benefiting the Black community. Damon Hewitt, president and executive director of Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, said in a statement, they seek to kneecap any effort to undo entrenched racial inequalities. The thing you have to wonder about is, who does any one individual think they are to go ahead and say, I'm going to go and change history and restore history by discriminating against people today who obviously were not the ones who were discriminating against anyone or anything decades and longer ago. The idea of vigilantism, discrimination to try to right perceived wrongs is just not legal. Corporate diversity programs are not affirmative action, a law professor says. So this is one law professor commenting in support of USA Today, who obviously, like the New York Times, freaks out anytime they get caught on their discrimination. Most Americans say companies should not take race and ethnicity into account in hiring and promotions, according to a 2019 survey from the Pew Research Center. But federal law already prohibits employers from considering race and other protected characteristics, according to Joan Williams, Sullivan Professor of Law and Director for the Center of Work-Life Law at the University of California College of the Law, San Francisco. Conservatives are attempting to mislead the public by conflating diversity programs with affirmative action, Williams said. And this, she said, is just nonsense. Well, put it in front of a court and a jury. Let's see how you do. By casting a wide net for qualified workers from different backgrounds, initiatives to attract diverse talent help employers make their workforces less homogeneous and their workplaces more inclusive, she said. No, it's not about attracting diverse talent. It's about giving everyone a chance to compete based on their ability. Otherwise, you absolutely destroy and corrode society. Williams has worked with scores of companies over the years. In a database of nearly 20,000 professionals, 80% to 88% of white men report fair access to career-enhancing assignments, while the proportion among women of color plunges as low as 50%. Quote, the bottom line is what the Supreme Court said is you have to have a meritocracy. What a good DEI program does is produce a true meritocracy. None of them do that. Conservative backlash is bluster, diversity advocate says. In the fight to level opportunities for underrepresented groups, the stakes are high, according to Shijuki Kadri, Director of Tech Equity and the Tech Accountability Coalition at the Aspen Institute. The unfolding conflict is a modern civil rights struggle for people of color who historically have been excluded and discriminated against in the workplace, Kadri said. Quote, they are using the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action as a proxy to attack any DEI initiative, she said. And that attack is stemming from a fear of losing power. That attack is stemming from people protecting their rights from people trying to do abusive things to individuals and the culture as a whole. The top ranks of America's largest corporations are still predominantly white and male, while women and people of color are concentrated at the lowest levels with less pay, fewer perks, and rare opportunities for advancement, a USA Today analysis found. Kadri says she's worried about the backslide in corporate diversity commitments she's observed over the last year and a half. For companies looking to reduce staff and initiatives, the Supreme Court affirmative action decision is a convenient scapegoat, she said. The flurry of legal actions from conservative groups has prompted some companies to retreat from public targets for racial diversity in their executive ranks and from their leadership training programs geared to underrepresented groups. Others are removing diversity from job titles. Most companies, however, are looking to the future and know they have a lot of work that remains, so their workforces and leadership will one day better reflect the changing demographics of the country and their customers, Kadri said. Quote, they get that it's a lot of bluster, Kadri said. Well, it's not bluster when Edward Blum comes knocking on your door, says, hey, here's a lawsuit. I'm going to see you in court, and this guy keeps winning these cases. So the discrimination is going to have to get dialed down. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.